Yes, in today's session, let's understand an interesting, very useful, small concept called isolation levels. Let's understand what are these isolation levels and why we need them and how to control the query behavior or how to control the logs, manage the logs, log management using these isolation levels. Okay, very simple process. My assumption, you practiced the concept of logs from the previous item. You practice logs. If not, please complete your practice so that it will be easier to proceed for this interesting item called isolation levels. Okay, very simple process. Let's observe carefully. Just wait for a few moments. Let me just take you to our SSMS window. Please hold on. I'll take you to our SSMS window. Yes, here it is. Assume, for example, we have a database. Inside database, you got one table with only 2 rows committed. Remaining 2 rows yet to be committed. Okay, remaining 2 rows were not committed. Now, let's understand. Yes, there is open transaction. So from logs concept we learned, we may experience query blocking if there are any open transactions. Now, how to control them? Isolation levels. Isolation levels are a mechanism to control the degree of dependency. Isolation levels are a mechanism to control the degree of dependency between the sessions. It avoids query blocking. Read committed. We can read only committed data if there are no pending commits. Used for data access, modifications. Default isolation level is this read committed isolation level. Uncommitted means we can read all data, uncommitted and committed both data, even though there are pending commits. Still we can read. Mainly for testing and audit environments in real world we use it. Just to check how the data is. Just to check whether the data really exists, what format it is, etc. We use read uncommitted. Then we have serializable isolation level. Means the DML operations block data retrieval or DQL operations. That is select and fetch operations, and vice versa. Even select and fetch can also block our DML operations. Means readers block writers, writers block readers. That is the serializable isolation level. Snapshot. We can read only committed data even though there are pending commits. Used for DML operations and sample tables, and mainly recommended for memory tables that we learned earlier classes. So this should be reminding us about read past log hint that we learned, practiced and implemented in our earlier classes. So read uncommitted should be reminding us about no log. Snapshot should be reminding us about the read past. Then comes repeatable read isolation level. We can read multiple data at multiple times in a single transaction, also called phantom reads, used in reporting environments. So multiple select statements in a single transaction. In repeatable read, the shared logs are held until end of the session. Usually the shared logs that we learned earlier, logs concept, the shared logs are held until end of the statement only. Here they are held until end of the session. So what's the use? Very simple. If shared logs are held until end of the transaction, so not the session, transaction. If shared logs are held until end of the transaction, then in between or within the duration of the transaction, if there are any select statements which are repeatedly reading the same table, they are faster. You need not allocate and deallocate the shared log every now and then, not required. I repeat, assume a transaction that has 3 select statements. assume a transaction that has something like this: begin tran, select, then some DML, again select, again DML, again select. Instead of allocating and deallocating locks at the end of every statement, we allocate lock at the start of the transaction and release the lock at the end of the transaction. So this improves performance, less lock management overhead. Then we have read committed snapshot. What is that? Read committed snapshot. In read committed snapshot, mainly for real-time OLTP databases. It's also for memory tables similar to similar to the snapshot isolation level. We can only read committed data even though they are pending commits. In fact, read committed snapshot does not have a separate setting. It is a small phenomena of snapshot replication, so snapshot isolation. Let's understand these items carefully. Remember, there is an open transaction. Okay, there is open transaction. Because of open transaction, let's understand how to control the dependency using isolation levels. First, read committed. Read committed means I'll just first go to the transaction database. Okay, here it is. Read committed means we can only read the data if there are no further or there are no pending commits. Here there is a pending commit, so we cannot read the data. This is a default isolation level query blocking or old earlier classes transactions concept, transaction basics. Uncommitted, see here, we can read uncommitted data also. What is this? Dirty reads, right? Isn't it? Dirty reads, no lock-in, transactions basics. Serializable, because there are writers to inserts, these readers are getting blocked. Reader is blocked. This is called serializable isolation level. Then we have other one, snapshot isolation. Here it is, set transaction snapshot. Firstly, I'll cancel the query. If I try to set this snapshot isolation level on, see here, it says snapshot isolation transaction failed because snapshot isolation is not allowed. Use alter database to allow snapshot. So what we have to do? At the source, this is important. At the source, firstly, we need to roll back the transaction, connect to master or any database. As per the command, it says alter database. So alter database name, set allow snapshot isolation on, like this. Set it to on. Once we set it to on, then use this about database again, then open transaction T2, T3, whatever, give some name. Remember, we need to step out of the current database, alter the appropriate other database, DB10, set allow snapshot on. Once we set this to on, now select. See here, no more error. So snapshot isolation means we are loading the data into temp DB. So that has to be enabled. So for that, we said alter snapshot, alter database name, allow snapshot on. So by default, read committed, uncommitted, serializable, they are supported by default. But snapshot, we need to manually set it on. Then next item, repeatable read isolation level. What is that? Repeatable read isolation level. Once we set this, remember, same as regular read commit only. Again, we see query blocking. Query is same, but if we change the isolation level, query behavior also changes. Now the question, when to use which isolation? Remember, in real world, mostly we use snapshot. Why? Because no query blocking. Readers do not block writers. Writer means select, writer means DML. Readers do not block writers. Writers do not block readers, mainly for OLTP environment. Whereas repeatable read, repeatedly reading the same data, mainly for analytics environment, data analytic environment. Now, what about the sixth one? What is that? Read committed snapshot. It is same as snapshot isolation only, remember. But that particular snapshot, read committed snapshot, is automatically enabled if the source have read committed snapshot set to on. I mean, at the source transaction, if you set this to on, then you initiate the open transaction, you enable open transaction or initiate open transaction from the other session. Whatever snapshot isolation we enabled here, this is set to be read committed snapshot. So read committed snapshot should be read like this. Read committed means, read committed snapshot means read committed in the source transaction, and other part snapshot should be from the read activity, I mean the other transaction, that is set to be read committed. Mostly we use number 4, just a snapshot. Why? Remember, if it is read committed, query blocking. If it is uncommitted, dirty reads, isn't it? See here, dirty reads. We see open transaction, dirty reads. Serializable, again query blocking. Repeatable read, also query blocking. So we are left with snapshot that gives you no query blocking, no dirty reads. Mostly we use number 4 for OLTP, DML. Whereas analytic platform, for better performance, we use number 5, repeatable read. So this way you'll practice this important concept, isolation levels. From here on, whatever tuning concepts we learned all these classes, you will be given a case study. Please try to work on it and submit as soon as possible. Get my solution before you proceed for your next module classes as for your registration. Please practice carefully on time. Use me for your doubts and clarifications, please. Kindly make sure we do on time practice, please. My kind request.